Coming up next on MCN, the McAllen Cable Network, the Development Corporation of McAllen from McAllen City Hall. The Development Corporation appointed by the City Commission is charged with making recommendations on how to use money that's been raised from the half-cent sales tax that was approved by McAllen voters on May the 3rd, 1997. The recommendation is made to the City Commission. They make the final decision. And now, the Development Corporation of McAllen.
Good afternoon. This is a special meeting of the Development Corporation of McAllen. Today is November 21st, and it's 4:05 p.m., and we're here at City Hall on the 3rd floor. We'll begin with number 1 on the agenda is to receive and file the unaudited financial statements for the month of September 30th, 2022.
Thank you. The statements before you are for as of September 30th, 2022. This is the fiscal year 2022 financials. The statements are not audited at this point. However, we don't anticipate any major or material adjustments to the statements, so we feel confident that the balances are accurate. If you turn to the first page, you'll find your balance sheet. And on that balance sheet, you'll see that the Development Corporation had total assets of $27.8 million, with liabilities amounting to $4.1 million, resulting in a fund balance of $23.8 million. I would like to point out that in your 2023 budget, you estimated a $22.8 million starting fund balance, so you will be starting the 2023 fiscal year off on the right foot. If there are questions regarding the balance sheet, I'll be glad to answer those. If not, we can turn to the next page. Any questions?
None.
Okay. The next page is your statement of revenues and expenditures. For the year, for the fiscal year 2022, total revenues amounted to $22.2 million. You had expenditures that amounted to $12.9 million, other uses of $1.9 million, which resulted in revenues over expenditures of $7.4 million. If you go back up to your revenue section, I just want to highlight a couple of unfavorable variances. Regarding intergovernmental variances, you have an unfavorable variance of $581,000, and that's primarily related to grant income. If we don't have any expenditures for grants, we won't be doing draws on those. So you had minimal amount of draws on those on that budget, but that is a grant budget. You come down to investment income, had an unfavorable balance of $633,000. That was primarily related to our GASB 31 requirements that mandates us to record unrealized gains and losses on the books. These are not real cash losses. We didn't trade any investments at a loss. It's just for reporting purposes at market value. Coming down to expenditures, you had the $12.9 million, which is about 51% of your budget. And that's as a result, we anticipate at least a handful of rollover projects, and you can see that on your street and drainage improvements. There's a favorable balance of 7.6. You also had a favorable balance of 1.2 in other expenditures, which is related to the Ansel Lewis project. And you had about 3.2 favorable variance in business district improvements, which is related to some 380s that had some unspent fund balance, unspent budget. If there are no questions, staff recommends approval.
What was other income on revenues out?
Other income, we received a clawback from a 380 agreement for, I think it was Turtle Services of 40-some thousand. And then we also received a contribution for a 380 agreement for from Megaware for 150,000.
Good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the report?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item 2.
Thank you.
Item 2, Mr. President, members of the board, is consideration and approval of a budget amendment. There's 4 items on here. Tres Lagos, developers reimbursement, an item for the Bowie redevelopment, a project that you have previously approved of Quince Avenue, and a new project. And so what I'd like to do is to have the engineering department talk about Quince, and then we can tell you about Tres Lagos, and then I would like to go into executive session.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. The item we bring before you today is consideration and approval of budget amendment for one of our drainage projects. It's the Quince Avenue at North 27th Street project. It's a project funded under FEMA, under the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program at a 75-25 match, federal, local, respectively. We did go out for bids recently and came in over budget. We do have our original project budget was somewhere around $798,000. Back when we submitted the original grant request was roughly around 2017. And as we all know, with the grant programs, they do have a long window. We moved, of course, into this time where our bidding is fairly unstable, I would say. And so with our current estimate, we came in at a over budget for construction, roughly at $1.5 million for our lowest responsive bid, with the costs for construction materials testing and some of the contingencies. We put an estimate in at $1.7 million. So we're here before the board asking for a budget amendment in the amount of $923,100 to cover construction costs and move into construction. Yes. Yeah, and so that how this would work out is essentially would still fall under the 75-25% federal share, local share that we have with FEMA. We've submitted the request to them, haven't heard back from them, but we did get a favorable response from them to go ahead and submit that request to them and see where we end up.
So we have a bid. We have a bid on this
Yes.
already. We have okay. We just need to approve the increase above the budget.
Move forward
Okay.
with award a contract.
Got it.
And I want to be clear that we are requesting an additional $923,000. I mean, that's obviously way over budget, more than double. And also want to make clear that we are submitting to hazard mitigation grants. If we get approved, we would receive $693,000 out of the 923, 75%. And we feel confident that it'll happen, but I want to be clear that we are budgeting the 923 as an expenditure, and then we will wait and see if we get the 690.
I didn't see a schematic of it, and since I'm fairly new to this committee, and it's 27th and Quince, which I'm very familiar with, okay? And then he goes west, or it goes west?
It goes west, Commissioner, from 27th and Quince, which is just the northeast corner of Lincoln Junior High, or what was the Lincoln Junior High?
Lincoln, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That heads west on Quince to about 24th Street. And then we have two branches that head north on 24th, and then I believe 25th, where the community center is.
Yeah.
Picks up all that area, actually ties into a downstream system that we installed with the previous HMGP project. It takes care of a lot of the issues in that
And there's
area.
been a lot of flooding there, or what?
Yes, over the years, that's one of the reasons we submitted for the grant project itself, yeah.
Well, I was raised on 27th and not Maple, Redwood, which is 1 block away.
So you're very familiar.
I'm very familiar, and I was,
That wasn't a pool.
yeah, but when I was growing up, there wasn't a flooding problem, okay? I'm trying to remember if it is today, and I
Thought it was a swimming pool.
huh? Yeah, he's trying to be cute.
No, and in fact, we did a little detention pond there at the school.
At the school, you did, I know you
district,
did, yeah.
To help us mitigate some of that, and so.
I thought the problem was more around the 495 and 27th Street. Yeah, I thought there was a lot more.
Water is flowing from the north,
Ah.
south and southeast.
Yeah.
And that was the major problem that we had.
The neighborhoods by STC
Yeah,
in that area
And
is
south.
where there has been significant
Good.
flooding.
okay.
So that would improve that.
Well, good.
One area too, Commissioner, on that one, that area, like Roy said, flows west. If you're familiar with Quince and 23rd, right by Rio Bank, that's a really hot spot for us.
That is, yeah.
That we're actually that's what runs on its own system that runs to Bicentennial. What we're doing is we're capturing, intercepting that flow and actually taking it west. So the existing system that's on Quince and
Control.
23rd will be able to take that. So
Okay.
kind of help for the neighborhood and, you know, the periphery
it.
on 23rd.
Very good.
All right.
Okay, again, there's 4 items here. The next thing I want to talk about is Tres Lagos. Last year, we budgeted money to reimburse a developer where Tres Lagos connected to, was El Pacifico, is that right? And we didn't spend any money. And so we're, in part, really, we're moving the money to this fiscal year and adding. You want to give us the details to that?
Sure. So right now, currently, we owe about $73,000 that's due to the developer. We're anticipating another 64 and change coming online this year. And the map of the service area for the areas that are being covered as part of the reimbursement are in your packet. And then the subdivisions that have come online that include Escondido at Tres Lagos, Estancia, Cascada, the shops at Tres Lagos, and then most recently Cascada Phase 2. And then you can see that we have Estancia Phase 3, Aqualina Phase 1 and 2 and 3, and Cascada Phase 3 pending, and they should all be recorded this year. So we anticipate having to spend those this fiscal year. So the total is $137,270, of which, as Roy mentioned, $110,400 was budgeted last year. We did not spend back into the general fund.
These are the developers, El Pacifico, but these are the Tres Lagos subdivisions,
Correct.
Right.
right? Because I know there's an El Pacifico subdivision.
He did the drainage for this entire area, so he's due reimbursements. And part of our agreement with the Tres Lagos development was that we pay the developer's share. MPU agreed to waive their share, so we're just paying the city, what would be the developer's portion.
This isn't the drainage, this is the sewer.
Sure.
Sewer and water, yes.
Yeah.
And
Now,
so,
there was a cap, I think, it was, I think, 1.4, 1 point, something like that, cap to both, I think, the PUB and to Johnson, the developer. Where are we there?
We're nowhere near that. We're probably
nowhere
at about 250.
So we're on 250 though, left. Okay, well,
We're at 250.
yeah, we've
250 of 1.4, or the cap that you're remembering.
really?
Yeah, because those,
We'll
these
get
are
to
the
the
only
report.
subdivisions that
Okay.
have been recorded.
Just send it.
Yeah, it's a very massive drainage area.
Yeah, it's
And it really is a great project that the PUB did prior to my time, so I won't take any credit.
Sewer.
Sewer project. And so it has a very, very large drainage area, sewer drainage area. And so basically the way it works is that the developer paid everything up front, and anybody that connects to that sewer system is required to pay that developer back up to a certain cap.
Right.
I don't remember that. So that's that. The other two,
There's gonna be more, not only Tres Lagos, but there's
Oh,
other
yes,
developments
absolutely.
that are gonna contribute to lowering that.
That's correct.
So that, I'm really, I'm curious how much is left.
We'll get with MPU
How
to
much?
make sure.
Okay,
Because it's all that dotted yellow line is the surface area.
Yeah.
that we're talking
yeah.
about.
And that El Pacifico project was probably about 2002, so it was 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Way, way, way back there.
And then we got hit with the 2008, 9, and 10 slowdown, which we extended because of that slowdown, because he really did contribute, and so did the PUB. It was a 70-30 contribution. But it opened up that whole area all the way to Monte Cristo.
good info.
Any other question? Okay, if it's okay, you can take a vote on those two if you'd like, or We can go into executive session, talk about the other two, and then come back out and vote.
Get 'em out of the way.
We can just go into executive session.
Okay?
We are recessing to executive.
Okay, we'll recess into executive session. 4:19.
On the budget amendment, we'll try to answer, and if not, we recommend approval.
We back on? Okay, we're back in session.
440.
It's 4:41. Any additional questions on this item?
We're taking a vote on all four of them?
Yes, sir.
Yes. We'll entertain a motion here to approve item 2, all 4 items that are on
That's all
there.
right.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, item number 3 is up next. Consideration and approval of Innovation Texas by the McAllen Chamber of Commerce.
So we've got the CEO of the McAllen Chamber here to make a presentation. If he will allow me, I just want to remind you of what we talked about during budget. So Josh Mejia is going to present. What I'm passing out is what we looked at when we first met with Josh about what he wanted to do as far as economic development at the chamber. So what staff and I recommended to you and the city commission was to approve the request, and then that he would come back and make a presentation, and then you'd give it final approval. So today, you can say yes or no. So what I wanted to remind you, though, is the total ask was $568,500. Okay, that's the bottom line. What I recommended during budget was that we take the, right in the middle of the page, the 200 and the 100,000, that we take it from the already budgeted $750,000, I call it slug of money that we put for new investments, so that we didn't have to add it, and the city commission and the development corporation agreed. Then if you go to the bottom of the page, the last three, the 50,000 on the bottom, the 12,000, and then the 5, Josh has agreed to take that money from their current CVB, which you all talked about it last week. So that's a total of $67,000, and that's gonna come from their budget. And then the top 3, the 110, the 16, and the 75, that was an additional budget that we added to yours in the amount, so it totals 201. So that's how we broke it up. Instead of requesting the whole 568, that's what we did. So if you have any questions, I can try to answer. And if not, we'll hand it over to Josh.
Thank you, Roy. Just to reference what Roy had mentioned, there is another visual in your packet as well. I believe it's the 4th to the last slide. There's a budget breakdown. We've highlighted what the Development Corp had already approved and what the McAllen Chamber was going to go ahead and match. But I appreciate the introduction, and first and foremost, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to even be here to be able to present what we would consider a partnership with the Development Corp, a partnership that we hope to establish today and hopefully for a long time coming. And I do excuse my voice a little bit off today with the whole change of weather, and also hopefully everybody can hear me loud and clear. So this program that we've pretty much designed follows through with what the public sector is now recognizing as entrepreneurship-led economic development. Traditionally speaking, economic development organizations focus primarily their investments towards attracting new businesses into the area in the form of primary jobs or primary employers. And the other component of traditional economic development focuses on expanding the workforce or expanding existing businesses to be able to create that new job growth into the area. Entrepreneurship-led economic development focuses on the same small business development efforts that you would typically find in the city, a chamber or an EDO, but helps them get to a point where they're now being considered as these large employers, right? And And just as a caveat, the federal government sees a small business as a business that's under 500 employees or less. So there's a lot of gap there that we can go ahead and work with. The strategy or methodology that we're utilizing here for the chamber is one that's not, we're not creating the wheel, we're actually pretty much fine-tuning strategies that are now commonly found throughout different parts of the U.S. and in the state of Texas. And what we want to do is be able to use a two-pronged approach to help out businesses, help out entrepreneurs be able to commercialize and innovate, thus improving their odds of growing, creating new jobs, focusing on new markets, et cetera. And that executive summary is also attached on your packet as well. The methodology for the programming, as I said, this two-pronged approach is to be able to provide continued education to entrepreneurs, to be able to mitigate the risks that you would find. And I know there's a couple of bankers here, so I don't mean to disrespect, but that risk that typically traditional financial institutions do not focus on, be able to reduce that risk, and also be able to provide some access to capital, which is one of the historical challenges that, quite frankly speaking, the entire Rio Grande Valley is suffering with. So being able to provide those micro investments into that area is a focus point that a lot of the public sector is now finding as a safe strategy to be able to pursue, to get some of these folks acquainted and understanding what debt leverage really means and what it can do for a business that's looking to expand. We see it all around us. You know, we see businesses that have been successful for many years. I spoke to a great McAllen citizen, Virginia Goss, this morning, and she calls them legacy businesses that have been here for several years. They've gone through a lot of different economic volatility during different times of the years, but still they're still here, right? And these businesses have sort of plateaued in their growth. So this programming, this strategy also helps identify some of these nascent businesses to be able to help them understand what it takes to get them to that next level. And as I mentioned before, we see that. Some of our partners, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight one specifically, but through ExxonMobil, they have a DIA strategy that's commonly used in the private sector to be able to help accelerate and help boost innovation efforts within their ecosystem. This DIA is really revolving around three components: helping entrepreneurs go through a discover programming to be able to help them understand what it takes to create a business, but also be able to understand, you know, product viabilities, feasibilities, and things like that. The other component is incubation, right? Getting those folks from starting something small to actually get them into a physical space prior to making those much larger investments that in some cases is very difficult to attain. And the third component to that DIA is acceleration, right? Once we actually get something that is a minimum viable product, be able to help fine-tune that business at a very accelerated pace, hence the term acceleration, to be able to get them ready to debt leverage in the form of traditional financing or non-traditional financing. And so this is kind of the framework that we are curating this methodology for us to be able to improve on our successes. So if I may, I would like for everybody to visualize just a pipeline that we're designing here, and we're breaking it down into four components, three of which we want to go ahead and directly oversee as a McAllen Chamber, as well as in partnership with the Development Corp. This first phase that we're just simply calling P1, this discover phase, revolves around ideation programming, right? It's the necessary education that an entrepreneur needs to be able to solidify those foundational components of running a business. We know that as entrepreneurs, they're extremely passionate about their craft, that they sometimes forget about everything else. And so those elements that they encounter along the way in this early stage of their business really steeps that curve in what they call the valley of death, right? That failure to success rate that a lot of businesses and a lot of folks are really familiarized with. This educational component helps not only provide the introspection that an entrepreneur needs to understand what it takes to be able to create a business, but also helps them with that strong foundation, right, so that they can be able to forecast and understand exactly what they need to do. We're doing things a little bit different in terms of proposing this programming. We want to be able to incorporate commercialization and innovation as well as resiliency in this program. Why would we want to do this? Well, in terms of economic development, what we want to do is be able to create primary jobs out of these small businesses. So if we incorporate these specialized focus areas, we're able to teach entrepreneurs how to take your traditional mom and pop product or service and be able to commercialize that, be able to reach new markets, and also in theory be able to increase their revenue streams as well. The innovation programming also becomes a key component to that, because that's really where your disrupting businesses come into play, and also for the ability to be able to utilize technology and be able to grow at a much faster pace than any other business would. So I know this might sound like a fire hose treatment, so if I may, if anybody has any questions, just feel free to interject and ask any part along the way. So in your packet, we're currently on the Discover Phase slide, and as you can see on the far right column, we've already essentially lined up partnerships for this specific program. We've landed Kauffman Foundation, which is the largest nonprofit organization group worldwide that supports entrepreneurship development. We already have $10,000 lined up as well through PNC. They're very excited about the programming that we're looking at doing. We've also lined up United Way and as well as some other partners. McAllen ISD is also investing in their entrepreneurship efforts, so we also want to be able to take some of those students and incorporate them in this ecosystem. As well as UTRGV as well, they're providing some students that can definitely enhance the opportunities that a lot of our entrepreneurs here locally are facing. So we've also incorporated a deliverables column so that folks can understand exactly how we're managing the programs. We're doing this in a cohort system, as well as the expected turnout of businesses that we would like for those to participate in this programming. Now, the second phase of this pipeline as well is that incubation phase that I had talked about. So once we get these entrepreneurs past this cohort level, we want to be able to provide them with a space where they can get themselves acquainted to operating a real business, while at the same time helping them with site selection needs, understanding where they need to go, helping them grow, and also be able to further define what their minimum viable product is going to look like, or their MVP. Incubation, in theory, should be no more than 12 to 24 months, 36 months in some cases for those businesses that are considered high growth. Those are typically found in your tech sector, as well as manufacturing, research, and development. Those companies that are in those industries tend to burn a whole lot quicker. But we have some spaces, some physical spaces as part of what the McAllen Chamber oversees that we can utilize for this programming. And we also have partners such as South Texas College that also has an incubator that could also be part of this ecosystem. Now, while we're helping these entrepreneurs continue to go through this phase of testing their products or creating their betas, we also want to be able to get them well acquainted with some other resources that are typically found outside of the Valley, such as tech transfer programs, so that they can also become familiarized with technologies to improve their products or services. Now, we've lined up NASA to be one of those partners to be able to provide their patents that they don't utilize in their lunar missions. I know it sounds very, very pie in the sky type of talk, but it is something that is available to folks here. They provide very user-friendly licensing agreements where folks can utilize their technologies, be able to incorporate a product, generate revenue for up to the third year, and if the product is in fact viable, that's when licensing fees start kicking at a very slow pace. Again, these are patents that are typically just collecting dust on the shelf, so NASA's encouraged these investments to have entrepreneurs be able to utilize these patents. So we've lined up those, but we're always going to be open to lining up even more partners. The university systems throughout the state, they also have their own tech transfer programs, so we want to be able to tap on those as well.
Do any of these partners bring funding, or do they, when you say partners?
Well, a partner for us can come in a variety of different ways. We obviously look at financial partners, we look at resource partners, we look at mentor partners. So we've touched a little bit on some of the financial partners like PNC, Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages is another one as well that would like to put in some dollars into the sustainability ventures that are going to be coming out of this programming. But we also have resource partners like NASA, the ION, UTRGV as well that's providing some resources. So it's a plethora of different partners that we're open to collaborate with along the way.
And are these like annual, or, I mean, is it perpetual, or?
These
are bring them on to as a partner.
These are perpetual. These are perpetual partners. Obviously, the financial partners, they'll commit to at least a year and then reconsider for another year. So we're looking at establishing those long-term partnerships with them.
Is the total budget for this project, is it the 568?
Correct.
Okay, so the city of McAllen is the main, or the development corporation, I guess, is the main financial provider of this program?
The large majority of it, correct.
Okay.
And is that on this budget, is that the only employee? I mean, that one person?
There is a line item that is up for discussion, if I may, to be able to consider just one more employee to oversee this programming, but, you know, it's open for discussion. We can utilize that funding to be able to have a partner, be able to help us oversee, or depending on the sentiment of the board, you know, we can have the existing employee base that we have at the chamber to be able to oversee this.
Yeah, that was what my other thought was. But it just seems like when you start talking about, you know, intake process, I mean, those are tedious and
Yes.
necessary processes of any program.
Engagement is also another thing as well. So
Absolutely.
I'm very familiar with the strategy, and I'm willing to commit this as well, but, you know, an extra pair of hands would also be very helpful. But again, this is, you know, I'm relaying it back to the board as well as Roy's recommendation to see what the sentiment would be.
So what, so the Development Corp's putting in the bulk of the monies. What all exactly is the chamber doing? What are they providing?
We're providing direct financing as well, not as much as what the Development Corp's contribution would be, but in the packet.
That'd be that 67,000?
67, yeah, 67,000, as well as a redesign of our organization to be able to create an economic development department. So we have indirect costs as well through labor. That way, we're just focusing on hiring one more employee if that's what the board recommends. But if not, we have about 4 other individuals as well that would be partnering up to do this.
And I apologize, I'm not up to speed with y'all's budget, but I was at one time in the past, and in the past, there was a large amount that was sitting in the budget that hadn't been utilized. I'm assuming since you're asking for this much money, y'all don't have any additional room in y'all's budget to take on a larger role?
We have a fairly healthy reserve in the form of restricted funds through the hotel occupancy tax that gets collected through the city. So typically, those dollars need to fall under certain buckets,
Right.
certain categories. But to be able to do economic development is not one of those buckets that, you know, we're allowed to use those reserves on, unless it's for marketing purposes or things like that. So that's kind of where we're able to provide that contribution. However, I would state that, as I mentioned before, I don't want to create a transactional partnership with a development corp. I want to be able to create a true partnership. And we are looking at leveraging some of these funds to be able to obtain additional funds either through the private sector or come back for further consideration to pursue a grant with the U.S. Economic Development Administration, which, as of legislation and policy right now, states these sorts of initiatives are really what is hot, for lack of a better term. So we want to be able to set up the city of McAllen to be able to, you know, get a very good, healthy position to be able to pursue some of those grants. Those grants are not small. They usually come in the form of $500,000 to $1.7 million in most cases.
And how do you determine the success of the program? What metrics are there to, I mean, is it just one company does what, I mean, how do you know if you're doing a good job? And how long would it take before you know this is a viable and we want to continue to keep pumping this money into it, or
Good question.
we need to scrap this and go a different direction?
Yeah, so we can determine success in a variety of different ways. One of the
Who's going to determine the milestones of where we deem it to be successful, where we could do?
Our recommendation in terms of the milestones will come to this table as well, because we want to be able to determine that together as a partner. But ideally, what we would see in the public sector is making sure that, one, we have increased engagement, so the number of not cohorts, but the number of entrepreneurs that are going through the programming from A to Z is one way to determine success. The other is, if you think about traditional economic development and how, you know, workforce is also pursued, some of these programs also provide a certification as well. So the amount of certificates that are provided to entrepreneurs is also going to be one of those key indicators that lets us know that they're far more prepared to be able to manage their business, whether or not they continue to pursue the program or whether or not they continue to seek capital as well to be able to grow their ventures. Now, the absolute pinnacle objective that we want to be able to reach is for some of these companies to be able to commercialize, to be able to set up their small manufacturing components within their business so that they can start creating a new line of jobs, be able to reach new markets, and ultimately generate more revenue, which will increase the number of job outputs that these businesses will tend to operate. Now, that's a long-term game. That's not something that we typically see within 12 months, but we hope to start seeing some of those in the pipeline within 24 to 36 months. And I can honestly say, just from what I've ventured out on my own, that McAllen already has that entrepreneurial spirit, that small business community. I mean, the chamber here is just phenomenal to be in. So we feel pretty confident that we should be able to get some good candidates at the end of this entire pipeline.
Josh, in terms of...
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, the basic criteria for a candidate, of course, one of them would be McAllen-based, right?
Yeah, so having prior knowledge of the sales tax use and the laws that govern sales tax, we would want to focus our attention on companies that are going to be situated within the city of McAllen, city limits.
The difference between what you're looking to do and what the SBDC does in Edinburgh, can you just kind of give us this, or is it mostly, is it doing the same thing just in our location, or what are your thoughts on that?
That's a very good question. So the best way that I can answer this question, because I've had that question asked before, is we're consolidating all of these resources that are typically all sparsed out, right? And that effect or the side effect of having these resources sparsed out is that folks here claim to think that these resources that they're looking for to grow a business are not found nearby, so they typically leave, right? So we have that brain drain effect. What we're doing is consolidating all of these existing resources to create the proper avenue for foundational support for some of these entrepreneurs. So the SBDC SCORE, what they provide is mentorship to be able to define a business plan, to be able to understand financials, to be able to get folks ready for some sort of loan with a traditional bank. We do way much more than that. That's just one out of the many resources that can provide a good foundation for any entrepreneur. At the end of our goal is making sure that we have refined ventures that can essentially present a pitch to any form of investor, whether that comes from a traditional institution or an untraditional institution like an angel investor or VC investor, and be able to understand debt leverage and be able to grow much faster. So this is far more invasive than what your SBDC can provide.
What's the life cycle of an entrepreneur? I mean, 24 months, 36 months, 60 months? Like, how long are they sort of under your umbrella through this program?
So we've designed this program to be 12 months long, but our incubation actually runs up to 24 to 36 months, depending on the type of venture that we obtain through this program. Now, ideally, we would want to continue to support them. Like I mentioned before, this is a long-term game. This is not something that we're going to see immediate results within the first 12 months. But we have a pretty good sense of where these entrepreneurs stand, where they're going, for us to be able to provide a report back and see if this is something that the Development Corp would like to continue partnering up with moving forward.
The Discover phase is 40 businesses supported at full subsidy. That's a 12-month deliverable, or what?
That is a 12-month deliverable. However, since we're a little bit delayed on our launch schedule, we're right now in November time. If we were to hypothetically speak, get this approved today and then make an announcement by tomorrow, we would have our first cohort beginning in December, ending in January, late January. So we would have a first set of at least 10 ventures that can go on to that next phase, and then we produce another.
So where are these ventures? I mean, they're already ready? They're in some pipeline already?
No, I mean, we're going to go ahead and get these ventures through promoting and through our partnerships.
I don't know who would be best to answer this, you Josh, or Roy, but the $375,000 that makes up the Kaufman, the startup, and the innovation categories, is that all envisioned to be spent in 1 year, or is that envisioned to be spread over a number of years? I'm just trying to wrap my arms around how big is this pie we're really trying to eat in a 1 year time period.
Before I answer that question, I do want to add to Sebi's comment. It's member agnostic, so it's also members and non-members that can participate in this program. Now to your question as well, There is no necessity to spend everything that we would provide in terms of grants, but the programming, the 75, is projected to be spent at least for that first 12 months.
What's the total dollar of grants in this number?
Well, the total fund that we're proposing is a total grant fund of $300,000, which would put us neck to neck with what we're seeing in Travis County, and what Houston has been able to do in terms of their innovation corridor and their ecosystem.
Josh, it seems like, those that would go through this cohort are more startup ventures rather than more traditional type small business. Is that kind of what I'm hearing, or is there going to be a combination of the two?
It's a combination, because
Okay.
we also have that nascent business category as well. So those are existing businesses that have struggled to find how to grow to that next level. And
Okay.
the typical example that I would provide is if we have a restaurant business that has been in operation for 5 to 10 years and they have absolutely no idea how to franchise their concept, this programming also targets that as well. It's primarily focused on those specific factors that are going to help those businesses get to that next level.
Because at the chamber, we already had the innovation grant, right? And then we had a program where there was a pitch.
Yeah.
The businesses would bring their product that hadn't made it to the market yet, but so there was already some aspect of this program at the chamber. This is just taking it to the next level, it seems like.
Yeah, this is a far deeper dive.
Okay.
Far deeper dive into that.
Plus going after existing businesses or maybe more traditional startups that are not like venture-based, one product-based, trying to get into HEB or something like that.
Correct. If the strategy revolves around the public sector focusing its dollars on ventures that are far more prepared to be better stewards of that grant money, be able to utilize them to actually focus those dollars into what really is going to derive that growth at the end of the day. And that can come in the form of a brand new startup, or that can come in the form of a company that's within the McAllen landscape that is looking at buying machinery to be able to produce in mass volume,
There you
for
go.
example.
You've been involved in something like this.
Correct. I've been involved in this trending strategy, Canada, U.S., and Latin America as well. So there's even a soft landing component that helps entrepreneurs that are foreign to the area to come in, expand into the area through this program as well. So it's an ongoing trend. It's something that I personally feel would position McAllen in a far better place, given the fact that we have a regional university that is doubling down their investment on being a Tier 1 research institution. So when you're talking about research and development, you kind of want to have a healthy entrepreneurship community that understands the language, that understands the programming, that knows how to interact with investors to be able to just foster and enhance those sorts of activities. In addition, you also have a new kind of company looking into the area, and I always use Zoho as an example. I mean, these are folks that are thinking in a different plane than what your typical entrepreneur would think about. And so they're looking at entrepreneurship activities such as these to be able to, attract other folks to come into the area and try to find a place in that new ecosystem that's being built out.
How does this integrate maybe like with Lift Fund? I mean, anything there?
So part of the programming includes a celebration of sorts, right, of entrepreneurship, and we call that Demo Day in the industry. And in this Demo Day, we invite traditional and untraditional investors, and that includes your CFIs, right, like Lift Fund. And what these folks are really going to be presented are entrepreneurs that have gone through a programming that are far more bankable than what they used to be before, because we've already reduced a lot of that risk that these institutions typically don't want to handhold the entrepreneur around until they get them to that point. That's where the public sector has found its niche, to be able to get these companies, set up for growth as long as you inject some capital. They do have a part. And I know that I believe the Development Corp has provided some monies to Lift Fund to be able to provide some loans. We'd be more than happy to incorporate them in this ecosystem, since that's a resource that if it's not being used right now as much as we would have projected at one point, then this should help them with that deal flow to be able to get them higher quality applicants into that system so that they can obtain some of those loans.
The fast track program, that's like an established platform, right? And
Correct.
process?
It's a certified platform.
Does that does that filter out the types of businesses, or who's making the decision of what applicants get in and get out?
So the application system's open for anybody. Their application process will ask a series of questions to be able to determine where the entrepreneur is at and where they're heading. So they'll typically ask questions about what they foresee the company becoming or their venture becoming. And then ultimately, we can make a decision either as a chamber alone or with the development corp to be able to pick and choose which of these applicants go through the program and at what level of subsidy we also would like to provide.
So what
Yeah,
I'm
because when I think of
thinking-
innovation, when I think of innovation, I just don't think of a local restaurant that's plateaued after 20 years of operation. I just think that they should be left to figure it out on their own a little bit.
Kind of.
So I'm trying to figure out how they would fit in a program like this. I understand someone who's got 13 locations.
Yeah.
And maybe wants to create a franchise, right, or turn it into a larger business model. But otherwise, I don't want innovation, entrepreneurship, and kind of something new to the area, or bringing in new jobs. We can always produce the economic reports that we retain collective revenue, all this, but
it's a valid comment. It's a very valid comment, and I've even been caught myself surprised with some of the innovation that can take place in a mom and pop restaurant that has been operating for quite a couple of years. One of our partners, two of our partners that we've lined up, it's the Texas Manufacturing Assistance Center. So they actually take the lean manufacturing process and distills that for a local restaurant, for example, to understand their deficiencies and efficiencies to the dollar and time or square footage and things like that. The other one is the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. So sometimes what the company needs to be able to get to that next point is just being able to understand the certifications that are needed to be able to provide services and products to, local government or state government or federal government. So even that also helps them get to that next level. In terms of innovation, I'm pretty sure we can find at least one restaurant that has found something or has dabbled with something that can definitely innovate that industry as well. So that's what the discovery and incubation phase.
That are now at HEB, right?
What about
Walmart.
building trades arena? The electrical, the plumbing, HVAC,
Yeah.
welding.
Well, SDC covers,
I know they do, but would they somewhere fit in this program?
Yeah, so, if there's this one venture that decides to focus on HVAC, even being able to help that venture understand what it takes to become hub certified or become an MBE, or be able to understand what it takes to procure, they can go that route. They can go that route as well. Again, commercialization revolves around that notion of being able to take a product or service and be able to expand their markets, right? So a lot of different ways they can skin this cat.
I think maybe also the succession of a business, from a parent to either a sibling or a child or whatever, and they want to take it to another level, this assistance. Because this carries research, right? If at UTRGV, at STC and whatever, so, some of research is, my research partners are important.
Okay.
Roy, I've always kind of known it as a general rule of thumb that if we're investing money in something, we want to be able to see that payback within 7 years. If we don't see it within 7 years, it's probably not a good investment from the city's point of view. Based off of what you've heard and seen, what do you think the payback time frame would be on it?
We'd have to do a little work to answer that question. I don't know the answer to that right now. This is relatively new for us, certainly for me. A lot of confidence in Josh's ability to do these kinds of things with this experience, but we'd have to do a little bit of research, Trey, to answer that question.
Okay.
yeah, but it's also almost like when you invest in affordable housing, I mean, you're adding to the tax base, you're doing things of that nature. So in this case, if we can help these entrepreneurs be successful, that's already helping us. I don't know, I view it that way. It's not always a matter of, it's a payback time, but I was gonna say, to you is that, would it be possible that we get more of a projection budget, maybe go to 3 to 5 years, and where you can show all your sources of revenue? Because I don't think this does the chamber a real service, because you're not showing the whole picture, because I believe you're going to be putting in more. You're going to be putting in backup, administrative, and things of that nature that are not showing here possibly. So I think it would be very helpful to us, to the city, to have a projection, and that way we can kind of get in our head, what are we looking at in the future?
We can probably have them come back maybe quarterly and give us a
No,
report
certainly,
on
but I'm just saying
the
that that's an
project.
exercise, I think, that would be helpful to.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, maybe at the next
But I
time
would
you're back.
agree with what Elva said, is that there's going to be a lot of components outside of direct road return.
And you would want that.
Yeah, of course, that's
Yeah,
what
You
you're
would
doing.
want that, you know,
That's
you
what
want to
you're doing.
encourage that, you know. If we can use the students at STC and at UTRGV, A&M, to help in some of the research for some of these entrepreneurs, that is, it's, you know, how do you measure it? How do you quantify that investment? So that's very important. So basically, out of the 501,500 from this corporation, 300,000 of them is going to be direct to grants that are going to be given to the entrepreneurs in this fiscal period.
Correct, and if I can expand on the way that.
And if by any chance there isn't 300 and whatever, there'll be less of the 501.5 would be less if we don't give out the 300,000.
And I guess to piggyback on that question, who all is going to be involved in deciding the grants? I mean, I would think that if this institution is going to pay the bulk of them, or all of the money for it, that we should have an oversized representation on where those grants go.
Well, I think that's what Josh is saying, right? I mean.
Well, I was going to expand on the way we would like to approach the grant fund itself. Ideally, given, you know, the experience that I have working with Type 4B boards, you all would just dedicate that line item. And once we've received outputs from that pipeline and we present their pitches and what have you, we can come back to this board and say, these are the ones that meet that eligibility. These are the ranges of grants that they would receive. Our recommendation is to provide a performance agreement of some sort where the entrepreneur understands that with the monies received, they're going to go ahead and invest on certain things that are going to help them get to that level.
Yeah, Trey, I don't think you were saying that this board would actually be involved in that sort of decision making, right? In terms of who is on who's on that particular cohort or whatever the case may be.
No, I just think.
Yeah,
that,
I didn't think.
I would just think that if we're going to be spending $300,000, almost $400,000, that we should have a say in where that money is going. Does it go to this industry, or does it, you know, where is it gonna? Yeah. I mean, I think.
But he's the expert. You know, Josh is the expert in this.
Well, I think it's kind of like what happens with the other, when the city gives money to other agencies, they go through and they have to prove themselves, and then the development corp or the city makes the final decision as to where those monies go to.
However, in this case, I think the one that's got to prove that is going to be the innovation. Each individual that's going to get a grant, right? What's the average you're looking at possibly for the grants?
1,000.
20. So you develop a set of criteria and you have a person that would review those. There would be an application process and all that. That's what they would handle, right? In other words, so then when they come back to us, that's what I'm saying. We have to come back and see how the program is doing. What might talk about agencies.
But who's going to be doing that?
What?
Is it just the chamber is going to be? They're going to have a group of.
For the grants, you mean?
For the grants, and then who's going to be put on that?
Yeah.
That advisory board, or
the committee?
I'm just trying to figure out. It's a lot of money that we're handing over.
Well, we just handed them $4 million though. I mean, this is 300,000. And they've done quite well at that.
Okay.
To be fair, Trey. To be fair, because I think I understand your comment.
Yeah.
That's the spirit of my proposal. I'm open to any suggestion to ensure that you all feel like you're engaged every step of the way and understand what's coming in the pipeline and what's expected.
But you have to have that autonomy as well.
Maybe
exactly. We just have to come back to us and say, this is how we're going to do it. And we get to a comfort level with it. Or
Yeah.
But
Maybe,
does someone get to the point where they qualify for a grant, as you stated, and they would be denied? I mean, that,
Well, there really isn't a denial process, to be honest with you, because once a business provides a pitch, they are providing it not just to us who are overseeing this fund, but to every other kind of investor in the room as well. So we might say, 20, 30, 50, 100,000, we just don't feel comfortable doing it because maybe it's money to, get a patent or some sort of licensing deal or anything like that. They might just end up getting it somewhere else because they've already gone through the programming, they know exactly how to pitch, and they can obtain that funding in a different method.
I don't know how involved we want to be in this.
Well,
I mean, I think it should be up to the chamber to put the program together and
yeah.
to get back to us.
To administer it.
Well, to administer it, but report back how it's
well,
going,
I think maybe a subcommittee.
and maybe
of-
on a quarterly basis, but.
Maybe a subcommittee of two people from this board.
But I think we should give you the opportunity to put the program
try.
together and then, have one of us or whoever, I guess Roy would decide who he wants to have as a review.
Well,
for
I
this
would hate to
board.
have just one from this board, that's why
Roy
I
doesn't even
said
have it.
What does, yeah, I mean, we're a funding source, so what does a couple of us being on this board or that committee have to do with the approval of those grants? I
We're
don't
not
think
on
that's
the
even
other-
appropriate.
We're not on the $4 million.
Yeah, we're not on the $4 million,
So,
and,
I mean,
and
That had pretty
and that was one
strict
person.
criteria. I mean,
Yes.
He needs to develop that.
you meet
I
those
mean,
Yeah.
parameters, you got a grant, money ran out.
Yes.
Yeah, you can come back to us with
worked
that,
out
with
very
that
That was a very
criteria.
systematic
Sure,
uh,
yeah.
output.
So just to
And it
be-
was a one-time bullet. This-
Yeah, that's ARPA
this-
money, yeah.
Like any agency, I assume we'll be back year after year after year, right? So
That's our
it's
intent.
not
Yeah,
400,
it's like
500,
Lift Fund,
600.
Lift Fund administers the program themselves. We don't get involved with approving the people.
No, I agree with Omar. That
Right,
they
okay.
administer, they report back.
Right. This is
At risk
perpetual.
is the funding if we're not satisfied with the results, right? I mean,
But we are auditing Lyft. I
I
mean,
understand.
Yeah, we do.
Every-
We could do the
Yeah.
same with.
I think this is the first time that we're doing this, and we need to give the chamber the opportunity to do it.
I agree.
And
I
then
agree.
we look to see how well they're doing and monitor
But
them.
It comes from somewhere and
and
it's
yeah.
successful.
Innovation Texas, is that our program name?
Yeah, that's the branding that we would like to proceed with. So there's a circuit of these sorts of programs that are popping up throughout the state.
Okay.
Utilizing the Texas becomes a whole lot more searchable whenever, entrepreneurs are looking. So we're not only looking at servicing entrepreneurs that are local,
Okay.
but we're also making sure that we're able to attract entrepreneurs to the area that will ultimately set up shop here as well.
all of the oversight from the chamber is at the staff level?
Is at the staff level, correct?
Any other questions?
On that last one you brought up. So, do they have to be based in McAllen or to be able to apply for these grants, or do they just need to set up an office here or have a PO box, or I was just trying to get my mind wrapped
Yeah,
around.
those are valid questions.
What does it take to, I guess, the first hurdle
Yeah.
to say, I'm here?
Yeah.
So the way this corporation receives its funding, ideally, preferably, you would want a company that has significant presence here in the city of McAllen. Just like any other company as well that is looking at expanding into the area, we would also be measuring that. If there's an entrepreneur that's looking at expanding, going through the programming, and hopefully receive some funds, we want to make sure that we've done the due diligence to be able to determine, yes, they're going to go ahead and bring 5, 10 new jobs into the area through this small grant that we're going to be providing. Because at the end of the day, we want more jobs, more disposable income, more shopping and dining, which is around the corner as well, to be able to produce more funding for a corporation of this sort.
I think, Josh, the main thing is we want to know what the criteria is going to be. And so probably bringing that back at some point, that would be good.
And some projections as well.
Projections as well.
Yeah.
And so if we can follow up with you at some point.
My follow-up question to that is, you all let me know how frequent you would like for us to report on the status of the program. This first iteration is obviously going to be a pilot, so it's very difficult for us to be industry focused. It's
Yeah.
more of like, let's test and see what the community's gonna spit out.
Yeah.
But we can definitely become more and more specific as time goes by. We have a good understanding of the prevalent industries in the area and those that are emerging as well, so we can always be hyper-focused on certain things.
And
I
market
can't
to,
tell- Yeah,
market to
I
certain.
can't tell you this, though, if you focus more on manufacturing and tech, I mean, you're just lining yourselves up for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from the federal government to be able to, provide an economic boost for the city of McAllen through these sorts of programs as well.
What you mean? Sounds good.
Sounds real good.
Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve the item at the moment.
I make a motion with a couple of those requirements, that we would look at some projections, Josh, and criteria on the grant program, and recommendation on who would sit on that overview process, or review process, I'm sorry, if there would be one. On reporting, I think the agencies report on a quarterly basis right now, so if you're asking that question, I think that would possibly be the most likely. Unless it would be burdensome for you as starting the program and maybe go 6 months and then quarterly after that, so.
Fine doing quarterly. I think everybody will appreciate and be able to value this program as we move forward, so.
So that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second, it
Can have its
has,
own
Okay,
website.
there's a second.
Yes.
it has.
Just make sure we are branded though as, McAllen, right? Because the Innovation Texas, if I were to Google it and I'm in Austin, I would think it's a Texas program.
I agree.
You would probably think it's an Austin program.
Or an Austin program, right?
Yeah.
And to Trey's point, it leads to, we want people that are either down here or plan on being here or will move here, right? Things of that nature, so. I understand the reach for calling it Innovation Texas rather than Innovation McAllen, but it still needs to be branded. tied to this
McAllen-centric,
McAllen.
I agree.
Sounds good. Any other discussion? There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
All opposed? Motion passed. Unanimous, it seems like. Okay.
Congratulations.
We do have an overview, okay?
All right. Do we still need executive session?
Taking care of that.
Okay, we took care of that. All right. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.